Sechas Nazir Daf Samach. We begin with the Mishnah at the bottom of Daf Nun Tes. This is a Mishnah we've seen quoted earlier in the last parak, and we learned it at length then. The Gemara here brings it, and the Gemara explains it. We have the case of the person who is a suffix, if he is a Mitzayra, or Tameh, or both, or none, in the beginning of his Naziris. And the Gemara will go through the possibilities of the Mishnah, explain the halachos, and explain what he needs to do with the karbonos. Then we'll get to other scenarios with all the other accommodations. He was a vade mitzvah and a suffix tamei, a vade tamei and a suffix mitzvah, or a vade tamei and vade mitzvah. What's the halachos in all of them? And the Gemara will discuss some things which we learn out of the compilation of all these cases and the halachos which we see from them. So let's begin. So our first case, which is the only one that the Mishnah brings, is where you have somebody who in the first day of his Naziris is not sure if he's a Mitzayr who's just finished, and the Gemara will explain on a different daf how that's possible. He's just finished his Taras and he's ready to begin his Tahara, or if he's Tamei Mace, or if he's both, or if he's none. So he has to go through all the possibilities here. The halacha the Mishnah says is that it takes him 60 days to be able to be Tahar, Vadai, and therefore to be purified of both Taras and Tuma, and that he can eat Kachim. It takes him 120 days to be able to end his Naziris for sure. Now, the Brisa says the same thing as if it's longer Naziris. Let's say it was a year Naziris, so he has to go through 4 periods of Naziris as well, and you would have the same halacha, the same 4 things. Now, why does he have to go through the 4 periods of Naziris? So, and what does he do with the karbanos which end each Nazir? So let's compile the Gemara's different steps together and go through each step one at a time. So if he's a Mitzayra, what does he have to do? He has to, if he's purifying himself, he needs to shave his entire body. He needs to bring 2 birds which are slaughtered outside of the Beis HaMikdash. One is dipped in the blood of the other, and the blood is spread on him. Then he has to wait a week. 7 days later, he has to shave all the hair on his body again. And now he has to bring 2 karbanos, a carbon oila, which could be an animal or bird, depending how much he can afford, as well as a carbon asham. Then he's tahar. Now, someone who is a Nazir Tamei has to take a haircut, shave his head, and he needs to bring 3 karbanos, a bird chatas, a bird oila, and an asham, which is an animal. Now, if he's a Nazir Tahar, he also has to bring 3 karbanos. Now, when he ends his Naziris Betuma, he then begins his Naziris Tahara. He can't begin his Naziris Tahara until he does his Naziris Betuma and brings those karbanos and ends it. Now, once he's a Nazir Tahar, he has to bring 3 karbanos at the end of the 30 days. An Oilas Behema, Achatas Behema, and a Shlamim, which is also a Behema. Now, what do you do with these karbanos are as follows. What if you don't know which you can bring and which you can't bring? Achatas ha'if you could bring even if you're not sure you owe it, and you just need to bury it. You can bring it misafik, but you can't do anything with it. In Eilas ha'if, so in Eilas ha'if you don't bring misafik. Chazal were not mechayev a person to bring an Eilas ha'if misafik. In Asham Behema you cannot bring misafik. The Gemara says it's a machlokes actually between Reb Shimon and the Chachamim. Reb Shimon says you can bring it at the Chacham, so you can't because you end up minimizing the time. The only way to bring it would be to say that it's on the, if you're not chayiv an asham, it's a shlamim. Problem is a shlamim is supposed to have longer time, and you're going to end up minimizing time because it'll have the times of an asham, which is a day less. Now in Eilas Behema you could bring misafik al tanai, that if it's you're not chayiv in Eilas nedava, if you're not chayiv in Eilah you could bring it, then it's a nedava. Chatas Behema you cannot bring unless you're sure, and the shlamim you could also bring al tanai that it's a Nidava if you're not chayvet. So now let's go through the cases and see how this works. So this guy shows up and he wants to figure out, he's not sure, he knows he's a Nazir, he's not sure if he's Tamei, if he's Torah, if he's a Mitzayr who's just ending or not. So he first wants to purify himself. So the first thing he has to take care of is Mitzayr. You can't start keeping the zeros if he's a Mitzayr. But in order to take care of Mitzayr, he has to take a haircut, and he can't take a haircut because he might not be a Mitzayr. And then if he's just a Nazir, he's violating his Isser Naziris. So he has to first keep his Naziris. On the tzad that he is a Nazir, he has to keep, on the tzad that he's not a Mitzayr and he's not a Tamei, he has to keep Naziris for 30 days. At the end of those 30 days, so he's allowed to take a haircut now, and this haircut has to be for his tzaras, because the first thing he has to take care of is tzaras. He just has to wait 30 days until he's allowed to take a haircut. But now tzaras, he has to get rid of that possibility first. So he takes a haircut, and now it's time to bring a karbonis. So what karbonis can he bring? He might be a Mitzayra who's ending and doing his first haircut. He might be a Nazir Tahar. He might be a Nazir Tamei. So what should he bring? So the 2 birds he could bring on the possibility that he was a Mitzayra, because even if he's not chayiv of those birds, it's not a carbon, it's not a problem, he's allowed to bring those. Now the oilas ha'oif he does not bring, because Chazal were not mechayiv on oilas ha'oif, like we said. Achatas ha'oif that he would have to bring if he was a Nazir Tomei, he is allowed to bring Mesafik, and you bury that. Achat a oilas behema he also brings on the tzad that he was a Nazir Tahar all this time, and that's al Tanai that maybe was a Nidava. Achatas behema he cannot bring, even though he might be chayiv it if he was a Nazir Tahar. At the end, he's going to end up bringing it, and that'll be chal. At the end of his entire procedure, he's going to bring it at some point, and that'll be chal if he's chayiv it now. Now, the Asham Mitzayra, the Asham Mitzayra, or the Asham for a Nazir Tameh, he cannot bring a Kohen Chachamim, you don't bring an Asham Yisafik. And the Shlamim, he's not going to bring now, he's going to bring it at the end, when he brings all his Karbanis, when he finishes his Nazir's B'tahara for sure. Okay, so now he's ended the first 30 days, he's taken his first haircut, which on the tzad that he's a Nazir Tahar, he's finished. On the tzad that he's a Mitzayra, this is his first Taras haircut. On the tzad that he's a Nazir Tameh, he has to start over again now, because the same haircut can't work for Nazir's B'tama. So now he's definitely not a Mitzayra anymore. He's taking care of that possibility, and now he wants to take his second haircut to get rid of his Taras, but he can't take it now because he might be just beginning his Nazir's B'tahara. If he was a Nazir Tameh up till now he's starting his Nazir's B'tahara. So he can't take a haircut now, he has to wait another 30 days. So he waits the 30 days, now he can take another haircut. This haircut, again, is going to have to count as his second Nazir's, as his second haircut for Taras. And now he's going to definitely take care of all his Taras issues. We can't assume that he wasn't a Mitzayra. We have to assume that this was his second haircut for Taras, because he might have been a Mitzayra. Now, he doesn't have to bring birds because he brought them already. He's yet to that. He does not bring an Elas Oif, like we said before, because it doesn't come Misafik. The only thing he brings are Achatas Oif. Because of the possibility that he is a Nazir, Nazir Tameh. Also, at the end of his second haircut for Taras, he brings a Chatas Oif, so it counts for that also. He's also going to count this as his Oila for Taras, because the Oila for Taras is really supposed to be an Olis Behema. It could be an Olis Oif if he's poor. So if he has property, he has to be mafkir at all, and then it's chayiv to him as an Olis Oif, and he's yet to that for Taras. And Olis Behema, he brings also for the possibility that he is a Nazir Tahar, and that's al Tanai. If he's not chayiv, it's a Nedava. And the other things he doesn't bring because he's going to bring them at the end. Asham, like we said before, he's not allowed to bring, and Chatas is not allowed to bring. He's going to bring it at the end, and Shalomim is going to bring it at the end. Now, he now has taken care of the possibility that he's a Mitzayr. However, if he was a Mitzayr up till now, he hasn't done any of his Naziris yet. So now he has to do his Naziris. But we don't know if he's a Nazir Tameh or Nazir Tahar, so we have to assume that he's Tameh. So he keeps his Naziris now as a Tumah, and at the end, he's finished his Naziris B'tahara, and then he has to do another 30 days, which is getting him to the 120, which will be his Naziris B'tahara for sure. So at the end of his third period of Naziris, he's now taking, this was for the possibility that he was a Nazir Tameh. So what Kabbanas does he bring at the end of that? So the same Kabbanas as before. He brings a Chatas Ha'oif on the tzad that he was a Nazir Tameh. He brings an Elas Behema on the tzad that he was a Nazir Tahar. All the other Kabbanas that he's chayav for a Nazir Tahar he's going to bring at the end, and everything else he's not allowed to bring. And when he finally finishes all his Naziris, then he brings the final status of Naziris. He brings what comes all the way at the end, which is for a Nazir Tahar, he brings the Oilas Behema. As on the side he's a Nazir Tahar, he makes a Tanai that if he's not chayiv, it's a carbon Nidava. He brings a Chatas Behema, also on the same side, and it's a Safek Chatas, he brings it, and it's chayiv kvura if he has to. And the Safek Nazir Tahar, he brings a carbon shlamim as well, and that takes care of that possibility. Okay, now the Gemara goes through what happens if he's a Vadai Mitzayra, but he's not sure if he's Tameh. So in order for him to actually be Mitzayra himself, it takes 8 days. And that is, he's a Vadai Mitzayra, so he has to take care of that, and he has to consider the possibility that he's tummy tumas mace. So he has to do 7 days. During these 7 days, he sprinkles paraduma water on himself, and he takes his first haircut for tzaras before, and then he takes his second haircut afterwards. He's allowed to take the haircut because he's a vadim mitzayir, and therefore it pushes away the possibility, the nazir's issue for sure. Now, how long does it take him to get out of his nazirus? So it takes him another 60 days afterwards, for a total of 67 days. Why? Because after he does the shave of his mitzayra, he now begins nazirus on the possibility that he's a tameh. Then, when he finishes that, he has to do another nazirus on the possibility that he's a tahar. He's got to do both of them because otherwise he hasn't gotten out of the possibility that he was a nazir bituma, and now he's just starting nazir bitahara. So it takes him 60 days to finish his nazirus. Now, if he's a vade tameh and safik he's a mitzayra, so here for him to get out of Tumah is going to take him 37 days. For him to get out of Nazirus is going to take 74 days. How does that work? So for the first 7 days, he has to get out of the Tumah. So he does paraduma water, and he will do his haircut on the possibility that he's a Mitzayra afterward. Then he keeps, so to get out of Tumah, he has to do the 7 days to get out of Tumah, plus another 30 days to get out of being a Nazir Tameh. Only then can he take his haircut, and that only ends his Tumah then, and therefore it's a total of 37 days. To finish his Nazirus, he needs to do another 37 days for a total of 74 days, because he's got to wait another 7 days for his hair to grow back, because he can't start his second Nazirus after he just took a haircut. At the end of his Nazirus B'Tumah, and then he'll do his next Nazirus, and then he'll do Nazirus B'Tahara. Now, on the last possibility, he's a Vade Tumah and a Mitzayra, so this will take him 8 days to get out of his Tumah and 44 days to get out of his Nazirus. Why? So he's a Vade Tumah and a Vade Mitzayra, so he doesn't have to worry about Nazirus. He can take his haircut right away, and therefore he does a paraduma and haircut for tzaras. He's finished with all that after 7 days, so that's over. But now he can't do his next shave for nazirus, so he has to wait 7 days for hair to grow back, and only then can he start his nazirus, which is now b'tahara, and that finishes off the possibilities that he has there. So that's 44 days, 7 and 7, plus 30 to end that Nazirus. The Gemara now discusses why can't the same haircut work for both Tzaras and for Nazirus. So there's two types of haircuts, and there's two types of Nazirus. We'll have to see the Talmidim ask Rav Shimon ben Yochai, why can't they overlap? We'll go through all the possibilities, both haircuts for both Nazirus. So they first ask Rav Shimon ben Yochai, why can't a Nazir Tahar satisfy the obligation of his haircut to be the same haircut as the one for a Mitzayra? So he said it can't. They asked why. He said because one is for future growth and one is for past growth. That is, the haircut of a Mitzayra is for future growth because he takes his haircut intending to take another haircut 7 days later. The haircut of a Nazir is just cutting off all his Nazirs here, and therefore that is a haircut on the past. So it's a totally different type of haircut. You can't do you can't have one haircut that works for the two of them. So the Gemara says the Talmidim followed up and they asked, what about the second Mitzayra haircut? Second Mitzayra haircut is also to remove past hair. There's no additional haircut coming afterwards. Let that count as both a Mitzayra haircut and a Nazirus haircut. So he said the problem is one is before the Karbonos, the Zrikas Hadam of the Karbonos, one is after the Zrikas Hadam of Karbonos. Mitzayra is before his Karbonos and Nazir is after his Karbonos, and therefore the same haircut can't work for the two of them. So then they said, okay, but what about a Nazir's Betuma? That is also before the Zrikas Hadam. First he takes the haircut and then he does the Karbonos, so let that work. So now here the question is which they were talking about the Nazir's Betuma compared to which haircut of the Mitzayra. the first one or the second one. So there's two versions of the answer here. According to the first version of the answer, he answers them only about the second haircut. And he says that the difference is that one, he needs to go to the mikvah, and one, he's gone to the mikvah already. Because the tameh is after he went to the mikvah. That's when he brings that's when he has his haircut. The mitzvah first has his haircut, and then he goes to the mikvah. Now, according to the second side, he referred to both types of nazirs. It's a second lashon, and what Rosh Hashanah answered them. He said, if you're talking about the second haircut, the problem is mikvah. If you're talking about the first haircut, the problem is this a haircut for the future or a haircut for the past? Now the Gemara ends off by saying Rabbi Chia brings a brisa, and he discusses that one is before mikvah and one is after mikvah. One is before zrikas hadam, one is after zrikas hadam, matching with what Rav Shimon ben Yochai had answered them. The Gemara now refers back to the Mishnah, and the Gemara discusses the 4 haircuts. That is, we had 4 periods of Nazirus that he needs to keep, with 4 haircuts at the end of each of them. The first 2 end up being because of tzaras. The third one ends up being on the possibility that he is a Nazir Tameh, and the fourth is for Nazirus B'Tahara. So the question is, these 4 haircuts, are these a mitzvahs tiglachas, or are these just removing hair that we have to get rid of? And hair has to be removed because it's in the way. And Nafkamina, the Gemara says, is do you have to remove it with a razor? You have to shave and do a maisa mitzvahs tiglachas. You just have to get the hair off. You could even use a cream or something that removes hair. So the Gemara says that Rava says, if you look carefully in the words of the Mishnah, it's clear that that's a mitzvahs giluach, because it says that he shaves these 4 shavings. Now, the first 3 are really just removing hair, just to get rid of the hair of the Mitzayra, to get rid of the hair of the Nazirus Betuma, and yet we call it 4 that are all the same. The last one is for sure a mitzvah. The last one is a mitzvah, regular Nazir Tahar. There's no other reason for that haircut. So we see we're calling them all the same, or giving them all equal status. That means that they all have an equal status of mitzvah, just like the last one is certainly a mitzvah. The first 3 are also considered to be a mitzvah, even though you're really just removing the hair. This concludes the 8th parak of the Masechta.